Tonight, we descend beneath marble and memory, where silence holds older prayers than any spoken aloud. Imagine the Vatican at midnight. Candlelight trembles against ancient stone. The air tastes of incense and something deeper, cedar, ash, the faint heat of something that never truly died. Beneath your feet, the earth hums, not with machinery, but with presence, a rhythm older than the cross itself. There are chambers here that no tour will ever reach, vaults sealed by papal decree, and within them burns a secret the Church has guarded for nearly 2,000 years, a flame that predates Christianity, carried from the fire temples of Persia into the heart of Rome. They renamed it, reshaped it, built cathedrals over its glow, but the fire remembers its first name. If this story speaks to the seeker in you, stay close, subscribe, and let these hidden truths find you when the world grows quiet. Now, breathe slowly. Let the stone grow warm beneath you. The key is turning, the gate is opening, and the flame beneath St. Peter's is waiting. The marble beneath your feet hums. You feel it before you hear it, a slow, rhythmic vibration rising through the soles of your shoes, climbing your legs like heat through stone. The Vatican at night is not the serene monument tourists imagine. It is alive. Beneath the frescoed ceilings and silent courtyards, there are tunnels, arteries pulsing with the memory of something that once burned. You move through a narrow corridor beneath St. Peter's Basilica. The air is thick with candle wax and age. Every few meters, the stone walls change color, pale marble fading into darker tones, veined with black ash. You brush your hand across the surface and find the stone warm. Someone, long ago, built fire into this foundation. The guard who led you here said nothing. He only handed you a small silver key, engraved with a flame. He wouldn't meet your eyes. "It opens what should stay closed," he murmured. Then he turned away, leaving you alone with the echo of your breath. Now, the key trembles in your palm as though sensing its home. Ahead stands a gate made of wrought iron, old and rusted, but humming faintly like a struck chord. On its arch, a Latin phrase almost erased by time. Lucem sub cruce latet. The light lies hidden beneath the cross. You fit the key into the lock. The gate sighs open. The corridor beyond slopes downward. Each step takes you deeper into heat. The air changes, no longer the cool damp of stone, but something dry and electric, like desert air trapped underground. At the bottom, the tunnel opens into a circular chamber. Its walls shimmer faintly, coated in layers of soot. At the center burns a flame, small, controlled, eternal. It flickers within a bronze basin shaped like a sunburst. Around it stand 12 stone figures, robed, faceless, each holding a bowl toward the center. You realize they are positioned in a circle, facing inward, their bowls once meant to reflect this same fire. But the bowls are cold now, filled only with dust. The flame whispers, not in words, but in a frequency that feels like thought pressing against thought. You step closer. The closer you move, the stronger the vibration grows, until it feels like the very air is alive. Your breath shortens. The walls pulse faintly with light, golden veins running through blackened stone. You see something etched along the basin's rim, script so ancient it doesn't belong here. Not Latin, not Greek. The lines curve like flame, curling into each other in symmetrical loops. You've seen this language before, but never in any Christian archive. It's Avestan, the sacred script of Zoroaster's followers. Your mind falters. What is a Persian language doing beneath the Vatican? You kneel before the basin. The flame dances higher, as if sensing your question. The air smells of sandalwood and something older, incense mixed with iron. Then, as though memory itself responds, you see it. Faint figures burned into the walls, men in tall headdresses, arms raised toward the flame. Their shadows stretch upward. merging with painted wings that once adorned the ceiling. You blink. The image shifts. The wings are not angelic. They belong to something else, older, wilder. A whisper echoes inside your skull. Before the cross, there was the fire. Your pulse quickens. You stare into the basin, and for a heartbeat, the reflection staring back isn't your own. A man's face, sharp, ancient, eyes like burning coal. His lips move, though no sound escapes. Then the vision fades, and only flame remains. You look around the chamber again, and notice the faint carvings along the wall. They form concentric circles, a spiral radiating outward from the basin. You trace them with your fingertips and realize they're not decoration. They're diagrams, architectural resonance maps, the kind used to build cathedrals for sound amplification. This entire chamber was designed as an instrument. When you whisper, your voice returns to you multiplied, layered, harmonic. You whisper again, a single word, Zarathustra. The fire responds. It flares, then steadies, as if recognizing the name. The warmth on your face feels alive now, pulsing with the rhythm of your heart. You remember what historians said of the early church, that it borrowed, reshaped, absorbed, light and dark, good and evil, heaven and hell. But this is not influence. This is origin. You pick up a small bronze plaque from the floor, half buried in dust. The inscription reads, Ignis Dei, the fire of God. Below that, faint and almost erased, another line in Avestan, Atar Mazda. You whisper the translation under your breath. The flame of wisdom. The fire bows low as though nodding. Somewhere behind you, a sound stirs, a slow, dragging breath. You turn, but no one is there. The statues seem closer than before, their stone bowls tilted slightly forward. The air thickens, shimmering like heat over desert sand. You remember something you once read, a rumor that deep beneath the Vatican lay a shrine that predates Christianity, sealed off by papal decree in the 4th century. Its name had been erased from record. You understand now what it was. Not a Christian altar, a Persian one. The flame dims to a whisper. In its glow, you see faint letters appear across the floor, drawn in lines of ash. What burns once may burn again. You close your eyes, and in the dark behind your eyelids, you see cities of fire, temples breathing smoke into the sky, and a voice calling across centuries. The fire remembers. When you open your eyes, the flame is gone. The basin is cold, but your hand glows faintly with warmth. The mark it leaves behind, a spiral of light, is the same one carved beneath the cross above. The light lies hidden beneath it still. You walk through dust and wind. The air hums with ancient heat. Persia, cradle of light. The land where belief was born not in silence, but in flame. The fire still burns in the ruins of Yazd, in temples where priests once sang to the dawn. But you are not here as a pilgrim. You are here as a listener. The earth itself remembers the words of the first prophet. The wind carries his name, Zoroaster, Zarathustra, the voice that broke the silence of early man. They say he spoke to fire and it answered. They say he saw truth divided, not by gods, but by choice. Good and evil were not forces imposed on humanity. They were decisions. Every act, every thought, a spark added to one side or the other. You walk into a temple buried beneath sand. Columns rise from the earth like ribs of a giant. At its center burns a small flame protected by a glass dome. A priest stands beside it, his robes simple, white, marked with the symbol of a winged disc, the Faravahar. He watches you with eyes that have known many centuries. This fire, he says softly, has never died. Rome built its faith above it, but never replaced it. The flame beneath the cross, and this one, they are brothers. You ask if Zoroaster was real. The priest smiles. Does fire need a name to burn? He gestures to the carvings on the wall. Stars, circles, dual spirals. He taught that creation was choice made visible. Light chose to become matter. Darkness refused. And between them, the world was born. You trace one of the spirals with your fingers. The grooves feel warm. But how did his words reach Rome? He exhales slowly, eyes half closed. Through conquest, through whispers, through blood. When Alexander burned Persepolis, priests fled west carrying the gathers, the sacred hymns. Some reached Syria, others Jerusalem, a few Rome. You feel it now, the pattern forming, the ideas of light and dark, heaven and hell, angels, judgment, the end of the world. They were all here first, sung to the fire before the cross ever rose. The priest steps closer. His voice drops. But there is more. The Vatican keeps copies of those hymns, translated, hidden, renamed. They call them revelation. The word hangs between you like smoke. You ask how he knows. He kneels, brushing sand from a buried stone. Beneath it lies a fragment of parchment sealed in resin. The script is half burned, but you recognize one phrase, Saoshyant, the Savior, the Redeemer who would come at the world's end to cleanse creation of darkness. It's the same prophecy that became Christ. The priest closes the stone. They took his words and built their kingdom upon them, but they changed their meaning. Zoroaster taught that the Savior lives in every soul, that each person must bring light into the world. Rome made it a single man, so only they could hold his name. You step back, your breath shallow. The desert wind outside howls through the cracks of the temple like the sigh of history. What happened to the priests who fled, you ask? They became legends, he replies. Some called them magi, some called them heretics. But they never stopped guarding the flame. You remember the magi of the gospel, the wise men who followed a star to Bethlehem. You never wondered why Persian priests were the first to recognize the Christ child. Now you do. The priest extinguishes the lamp and the chamber falls into shadow. The fire under the glass still glows faintly, steady, eternal. Light and dark, he says, are not enemies. They are partners in creation. But men of power needed control. So they made darkness evil and claimed ownership of light. You understand now why the Vatican feared this faith. It gave people no chains to hold them. It needed no mediator, no throne, only awareness, only choice. Outside, dawn breaks across the desert. The horizon burns gold, endless. You look toward it and feel something awaken in your chest, not belief, but memory. As if a small fire inside you has recognized its source. The priest whispers behind you. Every time someone remembers, the Vatican trembles. The light climbs higher. The wind carries a scent of dust and smoke. And for a moment, the desert itself seems to whisper the words you read beneath Rome. What burns once may burn again. The wind over the desert hums like a hymn you've heard before, though not in this lifetime. It moves through ruins and broken pillars, gathering dust, whispering names older than the sky. You follow it across the cracked earth until the horizon itself glows. There, at the edge of the known world, stands a structure of white stone, half buried by centuries. Its walls gleam faintly, even in darkness, as if the stone itself remembers the sun. Inside, a soft luminescence spills from an altar carved in perfect symmetry. No flame burns, yet the light exists, a glow without fire, a brightness without heat. This is not the work of man. This is a memory of divinity. Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, the maker of light. The voice that Zoroaster claimed spoke to him in silence, the one who breathed order into chaos. You can feel that order still pulsing through the air, steady, patient, mathematical. The rhythm of creation before language gave it form. You walk slowly toward the altar. On its surface rests a sphere, clear as glass, but filled with swirling gold light that shifts like liquid dawn. Around it, inscriptions spiral inward, Avestan prayers, half-worn but still legible. They translate simply, light is the breath of wisdom. You kneel before it. The ground feels alive. Beneath the floor runs a network of lines, channels cut with precision so fine they could guide sound itself. You whisper a word, and it multiplies, the echo returning softer, wiser. The space teaches you to listen. The ancients didn't build temples for worship. They built them for resonance. To speak here was to shape the world. You recall what the priest told you in the desert. Light and dark are not enemies. Yet here, standing before the symbol of pure creation, you sense the delicate tension between the two. For every ray of illumination, there is an equal shadow born alongside it. You place your hand upon the sphere. It's warm, pulsing with a slow heartbeat that does not belong to you. In an instant, your vision fractures. You see it, not as story, but as memory. A vast expanse of nothingness, before sound, before time. Then a pulse, soft, bright, expanding outward like a ripple through dark water. Ahura Mazda's first thought, light, born from consciousness itself, but not alone. From its reflection came shadow, the first duality, not evil yet, only contrast. The voice comes then, not from the air, but from within you, calm, endless. I am the thought that became fire. I am the light that made knowing. All that is good burns, but does not consume. You want to speak, to ask if this is God, but the thought dissolves before it forms. The light grows stronger. You see worlds unfolding, matter arranging itself into geometry, stars shaped by breath, planets spun by intention. This was creation, not as act, but as song. And within that song, a discord, a flicker, the moment the reflection looked back upon its source and desired to be its own. Darkness awoke. Not as corruption, but as yearning. You open your eyes, the light dims, your breath trembles in the quiet. The teachings of Ahura Mazda were never about dominance. They were about harmony, the balancing of creative and destructive forces through human will. To choose light was to cooperate with creation. To choose darkness was to feed its decay. But centuries later, that harmony would fracture. Rome would rename this light God, and its reflection Satan. The balance broken, the meaning lost. The eternal became moral. The sacred became political. You rise slowly. Around the altar, murals emerge as if awakened by your breath. Images of beings radiant and winged, standing within circles of light. Not angels, but Amesha Spentas, the holy immortals, emanations of Ahura Mazda. They governed not heaven, but virtues, truth, justice, devotion, and order. They were not servants of God. They were his thoughts made form. You study one closely, a figure crowned with a halo of fire, holding a chalice of water and a sword of light. Beneath it, an inscription reads, Asha Vahishta, truth itself. It strikes you suddenly. The same pose appears in the Vatican's fresco of St. Michael, sword raised, face calm, halo bright. But St. Michael came thousands of years later. Coincidence, the church would say. Revelation, the historian would answer. Memory, whispers the fire. You step back, staring at the mural. The similarities are too precise. Not imitation, but continuation. The truth was never erased. It was rebranded. You remember walking through Rome's cathedrals, feeling awe and unease mixed in your chest. The golden halos, the imagery of light defeating shadow. You thought it was uniquely Christian. Now you see it as inheritance. The faith that conquered the world was built upon an older one. A sound stirs behind you, a low tone vibrating through the air. The light within the sphere pulses faster. The murals shimmer. From the walls, faint lines of fire crawl upward, connecting the symbols. The whole room begins to glow, like a lung filled with breath after centuries of stillness. And in that breath, a message. Do not worship the flame. Become it. The walls fade. The chamber dissolves. You stand again in the desert, beneath an immense, silent sky. But the light is still inside you now, steady, humming, alive. The voice returns, faint as starlight. Every faith is a translation, but the fire remembers its own language. You look toward the horizon, far to the west. A distant dome gleams beneath the moon. The Vatican, waiting in silence. You know now that its light is not its own. It was borrowed, shaped, and hidden. The flame beneath the cross burns with Persian memory, and somewhere beneath its marble floors, Ahura Mazda still waits, not as deity, but as principle, the eternal light that cannot be owned, only reflected. You walk toward it. The night breathes with you. The world seems to hum. The maker of light has begun to remember himself through you. You dream of silence so deep, it feels alive. It moves like breath beneath stone, cold, deliberate, waiting. When you open your eyes, the world around you is no longer desert. You stand in a chamber carved of black rock, lit only by a single red ember pulsing at its center. The air tastes of iron. You recognize the feeling immediately. This is the other half, the reflection, the echo that followed creation. Angra mine you, the destructive spirit. The first shadow. The ember brightens, casting long crimson lines across the walls. They reveal carvings of serpents and spirals, their forms twisting endlessly into each other. You walk closer, and the floor vibrates beneath your steps. The hum of life inverted. Where the fire of Ahura Mazda felt like breath, this feels like heartbeats slowed to near stillness. You kneel before the ember. For a moment, it appears lifeless. Then it exhales. A plume of smoke rises, forming the faint outline of a face. Eyes of burning coal meet yours. Do you fear me? The voice asks. You want to say yes, but the word refuses to leave your throat. I was not born to destroy, it continues. I was born to test. The smoke thickens, shaping into a figure that stands before you, tall, neither man nor beast, its body woven from shadow and light alike. When the light divided itself, I was its consequence. I am not evil. I am the echo that keeps creation awake. The chamber darkens. The walls pulse as if breathing. You whisper, "But the church called you Satan." The figure laughs, a sound like stone cracking under heat. They named me what they feared to see in themselves. They forgot that their God once shared my name. The words echo inside you, unsettling, undeniable. You remember the texts you saw beneath the Vatican, their warnings of the adversary. You realize now that the adversary was never meant to be an enemy. He was the necessary balance. Without the shadow, light consumes itself. The figure circles you slowly, voice shifting between tones, male and female, human and other. When men built churches, they caged light and cast me out. But I never left. I moved into their hearts, into their doubts. I became the voice that asks why. You close your eyes. The hum deepens until you can feel it pressing against your chest. Within it, you sense truth. Every cathedral built to glorify light casts a longer shadow beneath. The Vatican's marble radiance, the gilded ceilings, the songs of worship, all reflections made possible by something darker below. Your priests burned my temples, the voice says, quieter now. But they carried my philosophy into their own. Judgment, sin, redemption. They turned balance into war. You open your eyes. The figure kneels before you, its eyes burning brighter. The church tells you to fear the serpent, but before the lie, the serpent was knowledge. Fire that walked. For a moment, you see it. Flashes of ancient carvings. The serpent wrapped around a flame, whispering not temptation, but understanding. In the Zoroastrian temples, it was a teacher. In Eden, it became the enemy. You whisper, they reversed the story. The figure smiles. They always do. It is how they keep power, by owning both faith and fear. You realize then what the Vatican truly preserved beneath its marble sanctuaries. Not only the fire of creation, but the shadow it cast. Both caged, both renamed. Ahura Mazda became God. Angra Mainyu became Satan. The balance rewritten as hierarchy. The ember flares. Smoke coils around your body like silk. Visions flood your mind. Wars fought in the name of light. Inquisitions, exorcisms, burnings. Each one carried out to erase shadow, and each one birthing more of it. The voice returns, softer now, almost human. Do you see? The lie was not that darkness existed. The lie was that it could be destroyed. You remember the phrase carved beneath the cross. The light lies hidden beneath. Now you understand. It was never about concealment. It was confession. Without shadow, the light is blind. The figure fades back into smoke. Only the ember remains, pulsing steady as a heartbeat. You kneel before it, not in worship, but in respect. You whisper, what happens when both light and shadow remember themselves? The ember brightens once, then splits into two, twin flames, gold and crimson, circling each other like suns in orbit. A voice rises from both at once, deep, resonant, infinite. Then the world begins again. You close your eyes. The chamber dissolves. You stand once more beneath the night sky. The stars above shimmer like sparks of a vast, unseen fire. Somewhere far away, the bells of Rome begin to ring. Their tones rise and fall in strange rhythm, as though carrying an echo from an older faith. You understand their song now. It is not warning. It is memory. The church's greatest fear was never darkness. It was balance. And the shadow beneath your feet is not enemy nor sin. It is the other half of the light, waiting, patient, eternal. You awaken to the sound of wind breathing through two directions at once, east and west, warm and cold. Two currents weaving like threads across your face. The horizon glows faintly in opposing hues, one side gold, the other bruised violet. It feels like standing between two worlds, neither night nor day. You realize where you are. The plateau of Chak Chak, the mountain shrine of the fire's last guardians. The air here hums with equilibrium, as though every particle has agreed upon its place. A single flame burns inside a crevice high in the cliff, its reflection mirrored in the glassy pool beneath. Two lights, one real, one reflection, both perfect, both necessary. A woman in white robes approaches, her head covered by linen, her eyes fierce and kind at once. She carries a small bronze vessel and speaks without greeting. Do you know why the flame is placed above the water? You shake your head. It is the oldest truth, she says. Light and reflection, fire and water, spirit and matter, the twin creation. One cannot exist without the other. She kneels beside the pool and places her hand over its surface. Ripples distort the reflection of the flame above, but never erase it. This is what Rome never understood, she whispers. They divided what was meant to dance together. You gaze into the reflection and see something shift. The flame bends, splits, and suddenly you are no longer watching light. You are inside it. The air hums with electricity. You see two beings emerging from a void, not good and evil, but currents, intertwined, circling like cosmic twins. Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, creation and counter-creation. Their motion is a rhythm older than morality. One breathes light into the world, the other gives it shadow so form may exist. Without darkness, light dissolves into blindness. Without light, darkness collapses into nothing. You understand now. Creation was never a victory. It was a balance, a covenant of opposites. The vision deepens. You see stars forming from the collision of forces, galaxies spiraling out of the tension between attraction and repulsion. Even in physics, the old prophecy holds true. Every atom contains war and peace. You hear a voice, not the woman's, not human. It vibrates through the marrow of the world. Creation requires witness. The world was sung by two voices. The words repeat until they become soundless understanding. Duality is not division. It is harmony misread. You return to the plateau. The woman is watching you, her expression serene. You saw it, she says quietly. The marriage of opposites. You nod. The air around you feels heavy, sacred. Zoroaster called it Spenta Mainyu, the bountiful spirit, and Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit. Two children of the same source. But your Vatican priests feared the idea. They needed one father, one law, one power. They erased the twin. She rises, gestures toward the horizon where dawn is rising and night still clings to the edges of the world. There is no dawn without night. Even the sun understands balance, but men of faith forgot that. You ask her how she knows all this. Because we are what remains of the twin order, she says. We guard what Rome buried. We teach that every prayer must be spoken twice, once in light, once in shadow. Her words settle into you like seeds. You walk closer to the cliff where the eternal flame burns. It is small, gentle, almost fragile, yet the heat it emits feels infinite. The woman stands beside you, her hands folded. This flame has burned for 1,000 years, she says. But it is not fire that keeps it alive. It is choice. She steps back. Every soul carries both the creator and the destroyer. The question is not which one you serve. It is whether you let them speak to each other. You stare into the flame and feel your heartbeat synchronize with its flicker. 2 beats, 1 rhythm, light and shadow pulsing as one. Images flood your mind. The Vatican's marble floors gleaming like sunlight, the crypt beneath it filled with darkness. Twin creations coexisting, hidden yet dependent. The church preaches light, but thrives in shadow. It condemns what it secretly preserves. The woman's voice cuts through your thought. Do you know why the serpent is always shown coiled around itself? You look at her, unsure. It is the oldest symbol of the twin. It devours itself to remain whole. Eternity is not endless. It is circular. She points to the flame again. If you divide this light, each spark becomes its own world. That is how creation began. A single flame split by the need to know itself. The wind rises. You close your eyes. For a moment, the sounds of the earth blend. The rustle of the desert, the low hum of distant fire, the echo of water below. All opposites forming one breath. And then the realization comes, clear as sunrise. Every act of creation carries its shadow, and every destruction clears space for rebirth. The Vatican built cathedrals not to banish darkness, but to harness it. Faith is fire, but fire consumes too. The woman takes a small step back and speaks her final words before turning toward the cliffs. Remember this: those who deny the twin eventually become it. When she disappears into the mist, the plateau grows silent. You kneel by the water. The flame reflects perfectly again. Two lights, above and below, both you, both divine. And somewhere in the stillness, a voice murmurs softly, "Balance is God's first language." The wind exhales. The twin creation lives. The journey to the old fire temples begins before dawn. You travel across the plateau until the earth folds into valleys where forgotten shrines lie buried in stone. The path is marked by pillars once gilded, now scarred by centuries of sandstorms. Each pillar bears the same emblem, a sun within a circle, flanked by wings. You enter through an arch half collapsed. The air inside is ancient, dry, metallic, tasting faintly of ash and cedar. The temple is circular, open to the sky. At its center, the sacred flame burns within a copper cauldron the size of a man. It does not smoke. It does not flicker. It simply exists. You kneel without thinking. The ground is warm. The silence here is complete. Not the silence of emptiness, but of listening. You realize that everything in this place is arranged to hear. The acoustics are perfect. Even the quietest breath echoes like memory. There are inscriptions carved along the inner wall, arranged like rays around the central flame. You run your fingers along them and recognize the words, Atar, the living fire. Atar is not a symbol, it is presence. In Zoroastrian belief, it is the visible face of truth. Every temple once held such a fire, tended day and night by priests who fed it with pure wood and pure thought. To let it die was to let the world's order collapse. You imagine those priests centuries ago, walking barefoot through corridors of light, their chants weaving with the crackle of flame. They were not worshippers, they were guardians of equilibrium. The fire was both altar and mirror. It showed them the state of the soul. You step closer. The heat becomes intense, but not painful. It feels like being inside the memory of the sun. You hear whispers in the flames, soft, rhythmic, layered like 1,000 prayers repeating the same syllable. You understand none of it, yet it feels familiar. Your eyes wander to the ceiling, open to the sky, framed by concentric circles of stone. You notice how the sunlight moves across the walls. As the earth turns, the light slides through the temple like a clock, marking time by reflection. This was not mere architecture. It was cosmic alignment. You remember the Vatican's basilicas, the stained glass casting colors across marble floors. It strikes you that they are the same, built to capture light, to choreograph time. The only difference is that here, light is alive. There, it is trapped in glass. A sound interrupts your thought. Footsteps. You turn and see an old man entering the temple. His robes are white, but soot-stained, his hands blackened from tending flame. He nods in greeting, then kneels beside you. "This fire," he says softly, "has burned for 700 years. Every spark of it traces back to the original flame of Yazd." You ask how such a thing is possible. He smiles faintly. "Because we never let it forget itself. When the fire weakens, we feed it with a memory, a chant, a story, a truth. Flames are alive when they are remembered." He gestures to the air around you. "The Vatican has its candles, but they burn for spectacle. These flames burn for balance." You ask if he knows of the Vatican's hidden fire beneath St. Peter's. His eyes narrow, thoughtful. "We've known for centuries. They took a spark of ours when Rome was still pagan. They called it Lux Christi, the light of Christ. But it was never theirs to name. You see, light cannot be owned. It can only be shared or forgotten." He turns toward the flame and begins to chant softly in Avestan. The sound is simple, melodic, yet mathematical, rising and falling like breath. You feel the air vibrate, the ground hum. For a moment, you sense every atom aligning to the rhythm. The fire responds, rising slightly, glowing whiter. The priest's voice merges with it, and the temple becomes a single note of resonance. When he finishes, The silence feels sacred again. He looks at you, his eyes reflecting the flame. Do you know why these temples were circular? You shake your head, because truth has no corner. Light touches all sides equally. The circle reminds us that what we call beginning is only continuation. He gestures toward the horizon. The church built its cathedrals in rectangles, with altars at one end, control, direction, hierarchy. But here, we stand in the middle of all things. No one leads the light. No one follows it. We are within it. His words strike deep. You see now how architecture itself became theology, how the shape of space defines belief. The Vatican built order into stone, but the Persians built freedom into fire. The priest rises and motions for you to follow him into an adjoining chamber. Inside, dozens of small flames burn in copper bowls, each tended by its own acolyte. He picks up a single coal from one and drops it into a brass vessel, covering it with sand. "This is how we share the flame," he says. Each piece carries the memory of the whole. Take this, carry it west. Let it remind them that their light came from ours. You take the vessel, its warmth pulsing through your hands. Outside, the sun has risen fully. The temple glows gold. For a moment, the air feels timeless, as if past and present have folded into one breath. You realize that every cathedral, every candle in every chapel, every sermon about divine light, all of it, is a distant echo of this same flame. The fire temple hums softly behind you as you walk away, its heat lingering in your chest. You understand now why the Vatican built over fire. They could not extinguish it, so they hid it beneath marble and prayer, renaming the flame until even memory obeyed. But you remember, and as the wind carries the scent of ash and cedar, you hear it again, faint but clear. What burns once may burn again. You smile, because it already has. The night air carries the faint scent of cedar and smoke. You walk through the cloisters of an old monastery near the edge of the Tyrrhenian Sea, where the walls whisper in Latin, and the floors remember the tread of monks long buried. The sky above is black velvet, and through the arches you glimpse the shimmer of stars. Somewhere within these stone corridors, a chapel glows faintly, the only light still awake. Inside, a single candle burns before an altar. Its flame wavers, alive yet still. You move closer, drawn by its pulse. The silence is so deep that even your breathing feels intrusive. The candle's light dances across the carved figure of a dove descending, the Holy Spirit, symbol of divine fire. You feel it immediately, the echo of the Persian flame, reshaped and renamed, the same element disguised as revelation. You kneel, and as your shadow stretches across the floor, you sense two histories colliding. In ancient Persia, the fire was the face of wisdom, Atar Mazda, the pure element that bridged mortal and divine. Here, the Vatican calls it Spiritus Sanctus, fire reborn as metaphor. Yet in both, it was never mere symbol, it was presence. The candle flickers, and the air around it ripples faintly. You hear a low hum, the sound of breath becoming language. For a moment, you see the overlap, the priests of fire and the priests of Christ, each standing before the same flame, each believing they alone tended it. One offered ghee and cedarwood, the other incense and prayer, but both whispered the same intention, to keep the light alive. You look up at the fresco above the altar, a swirl of clouds and gold leaves surrounding a burst of white fire descending from the heavens. You know this scene well, Pentecost, when tongues of fire touched the apostles. But Zoroaster's followers spoke of the same event thousands of years earlier, the Fravashi, the descent of divine consciousness into humankind. The parallels are no coincidence. The fire did not change, only the language did. The wind outside moans softly, and for a moment, you imagine the voice of a forgotten priest, reciting ancient Avestan hymns beside a Persian altar. The fire is mind, the fire is breath, the fire is knowing. You whisper the words in English, and the candle bends toward you as if listening. You think of the Vatican's secrecy, the centuries of rebranding, translating, and renaming. When Rome conquered Persia, it did not extinguish the flame, it baptized it. When Constantine saw light in the sky, he saw not a vision of Christ, but the memory of Mazda's radiance. You move closer. The candle's base rests upon a brass holder shaped like intertwined wings, unmistakably Persian. Perhaps no one here ever noticed, or perhaps they noticed and chose silence. The church has always been built upon two foundations, revelation and omission. You breathe slowly, watching the flame stretch taller, its tip sharp as a blade. You remember something written in an old Zoroastrian hymn: "He who keeps the fire is keeper of the world." The Vatican must have known this truth. Perhaps that is why the Holy Spirit was made flame, to inherit the same power, but remove the memory of its source. Suddenly, the air grows warm. You hear footsteps behind you, slow, deliberate. You turn, and a priest stands in the doorway, his face half shadowed by candlelight. "You feel it, don't you?" he says. You nod. He walks toward the altar, his gaze fixed upon the flame. "We all do," he murmurs. "Every priest who has stood here. They think it's faith, but it's older than that." You ask him what he means. He smiles faintly, eyes never leaving the fire. "The Spirit came from the east. That's what they tell us in seminary. They mean Jerusalem, of course. But that's not the truth. The light came from farther, from the mountains beyond Babylon, from the fire temples you read about in heretical texts. That is the source we never name." He lowers his voice. "There are manuscripts in the archives that describe the Holy Spirit as the living flame of consciousness, not a person, not a dove, energy, breath. They were written by Persian priests centuries before Christ was born." You feel the air thicken. The candle flickers violently, as though in response. He continues, almost to himself. "When the church built its theology, it needed inheritance, a lineage of divine revelation. So it took what it found, reworded it, canonized it, and buried the rest. The priest finally looks at you, but the flame remembers." He blows out the candle. The chapel plunges into darkness. Yet for an instant, you still see the flame suspended in the air, hovering, alive in your mind's eye. You leave the chapel shaken, half convinced the light still flickers behind your eyelids. Outside, the stars burn like small eternal fires. You realize that divinity was never meant to live in temples or doctrines. It burns wherever there is breath, invisible, waiting, unchanged. The sacred flame, the Holy Spirit, two names for the same living truth. And somewhere beneath Rome, in chambers the world will never see, that same fire still whispers through stone. "I am breath. I am memory. I am the light that has never gone out." The first scroll smells of smoke and salt. You unroll it carefully, the parchment thin as skin, its edges charred. Faded symbols stretch across it, half Avestan, half Aramaic. The ink shimmers faintly in gold, as though it refuses to die. You are standing in a vault beneath a museum in Tehran, guided by a historian whose name is never written. He wears gloves when touching the scrolls, but his eyes glow with quiet reverence. "These were found in 1933, he says softly, hidden beneath the ruins of Persepolis. The Vatican offered to buy them within a week of discovery. They were refused. 2 weeks later, the lead archaeologist disappeared." He gestures to the scroll before you. "This is one of the fragments the church wanted most. It describes visions that mirror the book of Revelation, word for word, centuries earlier." You stare down at the text, translating slowly. The lines speak of fire raining from the sky, of stars falling into the sea, of a final judgment dividing light from shadow. But there is no Christ here, no Antichrist, only balance restored, creation returning to its origin. The historian watches you read. "Do you understand why they tried to bury it? If people learned that the apocalypse was Persian, the church's divine monopoly would end. He leads you deeper into the vault, where more scrolls lie preserved in glass cases. Each one glows faintly beneath ultraviolet light. You see diagrams of cosmic wheels, suns and moons orbiting within flame, and lines of prophecy describing the fall of empires swallowed by their own greed. One passage catches your attention. A vision of a great city built on 7 hills, surrounded by water, ruled by men who worship light but fear the flame. You don't need to guess its name. Rome. You whisper it aloud, and the word feels heavy, inevitable. The historian nods. The prophecy called it Vahishto Dema, the beautiful deceit, the city that would turn light into weapon. You ask him how these texts survived. Because fire protects what it burns, he says. When Persepolis fell, priests placed these scrolls inside vessels of clay and buried them under the temples. The flames above destroyed the city, but the heat sealed the clay. The words survived through ruin. You run your hand across the glass, feeling the chill beneath your fingertips. These scrolls are not relics, they are evidence, the missing link between the wisdom of Persia and the theology of Rome. Another scroll lies half open on the table. It bears a familiar phrase. The Son of Fire shall return when false light consumes the world. You recognize its rhythm. It's nearly identical to Revelation 8:10, where the star called Wormwood falls from heaven. The difference is subtle but immense. In the Persian version, the falling star is not a curse. It is cleansing, a renewal of creation's order. The apocalypse was never punishment. It was balance correcting itself. You turn to the historian. So the Vatican used these to write Revelation. He smiles sadly. Borrowed, not used. They took the poetry of Persia and baptized it in fear. They made the end of the world a threat, not a promise. He leads you toward a small alcove where a final case stands apart. Inside rests a fragment more pristine than the others. Its script is in Greek, not Avestan, a translation made after Alexander's conquest. The note beside it reads, "Recovered from the Library of Alexandria, 47 BCE. The fragment's text chills you. And from the east came fire clothed in wind, carrying tongues of light that spoke to men. And they built temples and called it Spirit and forgot its name." You step back, heart pounding. This isn't coincidence. It's lineage. The historian lowers his voice. The Vatican holds copies of these in its restricted section, catalogued as Codex Ignis. They know. They have always known. He gestures for you to look again at the scrolls glowing under the pale museum light. They are not just records, he says. They are memory. The fire wrote them. The fire wanted to be remembered. You leave the vault hours later, the air above ground cold and thin. The night smells of smoke, though no fires burn nearby. You look toward the west, toward Rome, and feel a quiet pulse beneath your ribs. Not anger, but recognition. The lost scrolls have not been lost at all. They are waiting, like embers buried under centuries of ash. And when the wind changes, when memory breathes again, they will burn. The desert wind hums like a low chant as you step into the ruins of Pasargadae, the first capital of the Persian Empire. The sun sits low, gold bleeding into copper across the horizon. You stand where Zoroaster's followers once walked, where kings prayed not to idols, but to light itself. The stones under your feet are smooth, worn by centuries of ritual. Ahead, half buried beneath sand, lies a relief carved into limestone. Winged beings descending from the sky, their faces serene, their hands open. Their eyes are almond-shaped, unblinking, eternal. Not gods, not men, messengers, the Amisha Spenters, the bounteous immortals. You step closer. The carvings shimmer faintly in the dying sunlight, as though the wings remember how to move. Around them, the ancient inscriptions speak of virtues given form, truth, devotion, harmony, light. You run your fingers over the grooves and realize these were not just spirits of belief. They were principles carved into creation itself. Each one embodied an aspect of Ahura Mazda's mind, fragments of divine consciousness walking the world. You close your eyes and whisper their names: Vohumana, good mind; Ashavahishta, truth; Kshatravirya, holy power. Each name feels like a pulse, a vibration that moves through the sand and into the bones of the earth. You hear the faint sound of wings. When you open your eyes, the desert has changed. The sun is gone, replaced by a grey luminescence that reveals not ruins, but a city of light, unseen by ordinary sight. Towers of translucent fire rise into the air, and winged beings move among them, radiant, solemn, silent. They are not angels as painted in churches, not obedient messengers, but living harmonies, each pulse of their wings rewriting the air into order. You feel them before you fully see them, beings woven of sound and flame, no faces, only presence. They stand in a circle, and the air around you thrums like music too vast for human ears. You realize that this is what Zoroaster meant by Amesha Spentus, not individuals, but patterns of divine energy, the architecture of creation itself. One steps forward, its wings shimmer between gold and white, its body pure vibration. Its voice is not spoken, but felt. You remember us by new names now. Images flood your mind. St. Michael with his sword, Gabriel with his trumpet, Raphael with his healing light. You see cathedrals filled with frescoes and stained glass, angels in flowing robes painted centuries later. The figures are identical in form, their halos shaped like the rings of the Faravahar. The lineage is clear. The angelic hierarchy of Christianity was born from Persia's immortals. Rome borrowed them, renamed them, baptized them in Latin and fear. The being before you seems to read your thought. They took our faces, but not our flame. You feel a trembling in your chest. Then you were never servants, you ask aloud. The air responds in light. We were never servants. We were symmetry. We did not obey. We maintained. You see flashes, early priests mapping the stars, aligning temples with constellations to mirror the Amesha Spentas above. Each star, an echo of a virtue. Each prayer, a frequency aligning heaven and earth. The angelic being circles you, and its wings brush your skin. The touch burns and heals at once. They changed the song, it whispers. They turned harmony into hierarchy. The fire became command. And so the world learned fear of the light. You see how it happened. As the church rose, the old virtues were repurposed. Truth became judgment. Devotion became obedience. Power became dominion. The 7 immortals became the 7 archangels, stripped of equality, chained to divine authority. But in this place, they still remember. The being lifts its wings. When men built churches, we withdrew into silence. But the fire remains in your breath. You are its keeper now. The city of light begins to fade. The air cools. You stand again among the ruins of Pasargadae. The carvings are still there, but their wings no longer shimmer. Only sand moves across their faces. You realize something. Angels were never watchers from heaven. They were reflections of the world's own virtues, guardians of consciousness itself. You whisper to the wind, Amesha Spentus. And the wind answers in a tone like distant bells. Remember us not as servants, but as symmetry. As the sun dips below the horizon, the first star appears. You stare at it, and for a fleeting moment, it feels alive, pulsing like a heart, glowing like a soul that never forgot its wings. The angels of Persia have not left. They wait within the light, patient, eternal, unowned. You dream of gardens that never died, not Eden, older, wilder, a garden where fire and knowledge were not forbidden. The air hums with creation. In its center, a serpent made of pure radiance coils around a pillar of flame. its scales shimmering like mirrors reflecting the first dawn. You walk toward it, barefoot on soil that feels warm and breathing. The serpent raises its head. Its eyes are not malicious. They are filled with knowing. It speaks without voice. Before the lie, I was light. The vision shifts. The garden dissolves into ruins, the flame reduced to embers. Statues of angels stand where trees once grew. Their swords drip light like molten glass. You realize you are witnessing a memory rewritten. The transformation of the serpent from teacher to tempter. Long before the Bible, before Genesis was carved in Hebrew, Persian priests spoke of a serpent who lived within fire. Dahaka, the being of knowledge and transformation. It was not evil, it was balance incarnate. In Zoroastrian lore, Dahaka's gift was discernment, the ability to see both creation and its shadow. But over time, conquerors needed control, so they recast the serpent as corrupter, turning wisdom into sin. You open your eyes and find yourself in a dark chamber beneath an old cathedral. The walls are lined with relics, crosses, chalices, fragments of bone. Yet among them sits a sculpture no priest would admit to owning, a bronze serpent coiled around a torch. You touch it, and warmth spreads through your fingers. You whisper the ancient name, Dahaka. The torch flares to life. The room transforms. The stone walls ripple like water, and you stand again in the garden of fire. The serpent uncoils, immense, majestic, neither beast nor god, but idea made form. It speaks again. They feared what they could not own. So they named me evil, and in doing so, forgot the purpose of the flame. You ask it what that purpose was. To awaken, it answers. Not to obey. The words strike you with the weight of truth. All light, all fire, all revelation. It was never meant to command. It was meant to ignite awareness. The serpent was never the enemy of God. It was the question that made God real. You see flashes through time. Babylonian tablets describing the serpent as the bringer of wisdom. Persian temples where fire was called the serpent's breath. And later, Vatican manuscripts depicting the serpent crushed underfoot. The triumph of obedience over consciousness. The serpent circles you slowly, its scales catching every glint of unseen light. The church learned my secret, it says. That control begins by vilifying curiosity. So they painted me in shadow and placed themselves as keepers of light. But their light is borrowed, and their shadow is mine. Its eyes burn brighter. You have seen the vaults, the flames, the truth buried under marble. Do you understand now? You nod. They didn't destroy you. They caged you. The serpent lowers its head. Cages are temporary. Fire waits. It shows you a vision. Rome burning, cathedrals collapsing, and within the ruins, a small flame rekindled in the hands of children who do not know the names of gods, but know instinctively how to keep the light alive. The serpent's coils tighten around the pillar of flame, merging with it until the two are indistinguishable. Light shaped like motion, motion shaped like thought. I am not temptation, it says. I am memory. You step closer, and for an instant, you feel its warmth against your skin. It does not burn. It clarifies. Every lie, every rewritten scripture, every stolen symbol becomes transparent before your eyes. The serpent was the teacher humanity wasn't ready to hear. You hear echoes of Genesis in your mind, and their eyes were opened. But you realize now that this was not a curse. It was awakening. The first act of divine rebellion was not sin. It was understanding. The garden fades again, replaced by the cathedral's cold stone. The torchlight flickers weakly, but you know what it represents now. The remnant of the serpent's flame, still alive within the sanctum that sought to kill it. You whisper into the shadows. You are not gone. The air shivers. A soft voice replies, I never was. When you ascend back to the surface, dawn is breaking. The first light touches the cross atop the steeple. and for a fleeting second, you see it differently. Not a symbol of domination, but of the serpent coiled in silent defiance, its body forming the curve of resurrection. Light bends, shadow breathes, knowledge waits, and in the stillness before the bells ring, you feel it again, the truth that has survived every rewriting. The serpent was never the devil. The serpent was the fire that dared to think. You walk away from the cathedral, the morning sun on your face, the whisper of the serpent lingering in your mind like an unfinished sentence. The light that questions is the light that endures. The air in the Vatican library is colder than stone should allow. You walk through aisles lined with manuscripts that hum softly under glass. Dust hangs in the light like silent smoke. Every corridor leads deeper, into sections not marked on any map. Somewhere beyond the visible archive lies the chamber you came for, the restricted collection. The keepers call it Index Prohibitorum Spiritus, the forbidden index of the spirit. You follow a corridor that curves like a serpent through marble. At its end stands a single door of oak, sealed with wax and symbols. The key in your hand feels heavier than it should. When you turn it, the wax cracks, releasing a scent like burned myrrh. The door opens without resistance, as though expecting you. Inside, the room is smaller than you imagined, circular, lined with shelves of scrolls bound in leather, blackened with age. A single lamp burns in the center, its light faint but steady. You walk toward it. Beneath the lamp sits a desk of white marble, and on it, 7 manuscripts. Their bindings are unmarked except for one symbol pressed into the leather, a flame encircled by a cross. You open the first. The parchment whispers as it unfolds. The script is Avestan, but the margins are annotated in Latin. The handwriting belongs to a Vatican scribe. You read the translation aloud under your breath. The fire that breathes is the spirit of the world. He who carries it carries the breath of God. You freeze. The line mirrors John 20:22. He breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit." But this text predates Christianity by centuries. Your pulse quickens. You turn another page. The Avestan text speaks of divine messengers, winged emanations who govern creation. The Latin note beside it reads, the Amesha Spentus, reinterpreted as Archangeli, 7 in number. The correspondence is exact. Each margin tells the same story. Persian origin, Roman translation, Christian adoption. The scrolls describe not theft, but transformation. A faith reborn through secrecy. You whisper, they translated the fire into spirit. The lamp flickers, as if in agreement. You move to the next manuscript. Its cover bears a different mark. 2 interlocked circles, the symbol of duality. Inside, you find what appears to be a dialogue between 2 priests, written centuries apart. The first asks, "What shall we do with the hymns of the fire worshippers? They mirror our gospel too closely." The second replies, "Translate them, but change the subject of the light. Make it the sun, not the flame." You sit in silence. These are not apocryphal letters. They are confessions. You look around the room and notice something you hadn't before. A mosaic on the floor, half covered by dust. You kneel and wipe it clean. The image shows a man kneeling before a flame, while another stands behind him holding a cross. The inscription below reads, "From one fire, many tongues." It's Pentecost rewritten through Persian theology. You open another manuscript. This one is older, its ink faded into brown. The text describes the Book of Divine Light, a Persian scroll believed lost after the fall of Persepolis. But the Latin margin reveals the truth. A fragment preserved within the codices of Alexandria, later merged into the Johannine Gospel, the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. You read the Persian version aloud. In the beginning was light, and the light spoke, and the world became sound. Your breath catches. The foundation of Christian theology, the Word made flesh, was once the flame made sound. You sit back, trembling. You begin to understand why the Vatican hid these texts. If the people learned that the roots of Christian doctrine came from Zoroastrian hymns, the illusion of divine originality would collapse. A faint creak interrupts your thoughts. You turn sharply. In the corner of the chamber, a shadow moves, a figure cloaked in black. You catch only a glimpse before he speaks. You've seen enough. The voice is calm, papery, patient. The figure steps into the lamplight. He wears the insignia of the Archivum Secretum. His eyes are not unkind. "Do you know how many before you have read those pages?" he asks. You shake your head. "None who still serve the church." He gestures toward the scrolls. "These were never meant to deceive. They were meant to preserve. The truth cannot survive without disguise." You ask him what that means. He sighs, placing a gloved hand upon one manuscript. Faith requires continuity. The people needed a story that spoke in their own tongue. So we translated the fire into the word, the amisha into angels, the jewel into the divine. We did not erase Persia, we hid it within scripture. You realize then that this man is not a liar. He is a curator of illusion, a guardian of dangerous memory. He looks at you one last time. Every truth must wear a mask to survive empire. Then he extinguishes the lamp. Darkness floods the chamber. When you open your eyes again, you are back in the outer archive. The door behind you is sealed, the wax unbroken. You walk out into the Vatican courtyard. The night is still, the air cold. You can still feel the manuscript's weight in your chest. The fire never died. It was simply translated. You stand inside a cathedral at dawn. Light spills through stained glass, painting the marble floor in crimson and gold. The colors move slowly as the sun climbs, like living breath. You can feel it, the fire beneath the beauty. Every window tells the same story. Good against evil, heaven above, hell below. But beneath the color and glass lies something older, something truer. You walk toward the altar, your footsteps echoing like whispers between centuries. The crucifix above it gleams, bathed in morning light. Yet behind that radiance you sense imbalance, one half exalted, the other condemned. The gospel of duality, rewritten as opposition rather than harmony. You close your eyes. The hum of the city fades. In its place, a different sound rises, low, resonant, ancient. Two voices singing in harmony, one bright, one dark. The first voice says, "I create." The second answers, "I contain." Together, they form the rhythm of existence. You open your eyes and see it clearly now. The church did not invent good and evil. It separated them. The Zoroastrians saw both as necessary. Ahura Mazda's order and Angra Mainyu's resistance in perpetual balance. The gospel took that balance and turned it into war. You sit before the altar, studying the fresco above. Angels with swords chase demons into pits of flame. Yet in the Persian stories, the same fire purified both. Hell was not punishment, it was refinement. Every soul passed through flame to be cleansed of shadow, not condemned by it. You whisper to yourself, heaven was never reward, it was restoration. The words feel dangerous, even here. A nun sweeping the far end of the cathedral pauses and looks at you. Her eyes linger longer than polite curiosity allows. Then she speaks softly, almost like prayer. You see it too, don't you? You nod. She sets her broom aside and walks closer. Her face is lined with years of silence. I was taught that evil was absence, she says. But the older texts say otherwise. Evil is imbalance. When one side forgets the other, creation suffers. You ask her how she knows this. She smiles faintly. Because I read before I believed. Her words carry the weight of quiet rebellion. She kneels beside you and points toward a stained glass window depicting Saint Michael casting Lucifer from heaven. "Look closer," she whispers. You do, and you see it. A detail the eye is meant to miss. Michael's sword is not cutting, it's reflecting. The light of heaven and the darkness of the fall form one mirrored beam. Two sides of the same flame. She leans closer. Lucifer means light bearer. The church forgot that. They needed a villain to make obedience holy. Her voice trembles. But Lucifer and Michael were never enemies in the old scripts. They were twins of purpose, the first embodiments of balance. You stare at the window until your vision blurs. The colors merge into white, and for a moment, you see what the Persians once taught, that divinity is not split between two forces, but shared between them. You ask the nun if the Vatican knows this. She laughs softly, the kind of laugh born of resignation. They know everything. They just choose which half to preach. The bells begin to ring outside. The sound fills the cathedral like heartbeat. Light spills stronger now, bright enough to make the gold leaf on the altar glow. You think of the jewel creation you saw in the desert, the two currents moving in harmony. You understand now how the gospel of duality distorted that truth. It made the world choose sides. It demanded allegiance instead of awareness. You look again at the crucifix, light above, shadow below. Then you imagine it inverted, not as blasphemy, but correction. The cross as balance, not hierarchy. A symbol of the twin, not of victory. The nun rises and whispers, "The church built heaven by denying half of God." Then she walks away, disappearing into the light. You remain kneeling, eyes on the stained glass. The images seem to move now, angels and demons circling each other in an endless dance. Not war, choreography. For the first time, you understand that salvation was never meant to separate light from shadow. It was meant to reconcile them. You close your eyes and whisper what Zoroaster once taught. To choose the good mind is to make darkness useful. Outside, the bells fall silent. The city stirs. You rise slowly, feeling the warmth of sunlight against your skin. Not pure, not perfect, but balanced by the coolness of the air around it. The gospel of duality has always been incomplete, and as you step into the morning, you realize the truest faith is not in the triumph of one over the other, but in the fire that keeps them both alive. The room smells of wax, parchment, and secrecy. The year is 325 AD, and you stand unseen in the shadows of a hall in Nicaea, the council chamber, where the fate of truth is being rewritten. Outside, the sun burns over the empire, but here, the light never enters. Torches flicker against stone walls. Bishops in white and crimson robes murmur like wind through dead trees. At the center, Emperor Constantine sits upon a raised platform, his armor polished to gold. He looks less like a ruler of faith than a conqueror of memory. His eyes are fixed not on heaven, but on control. Around him lie scrolls, Greek, Syriac, Persian. Some marked apocrypha, others sealed with wax that smells faintly of ash. You realize where you are. The Council of Nicaea, the place where one faith became many, and then became one again, under decree. A voice rises among the bishops. These texts speak of two creators, he says, holding up a fragile parchment written in a Vestan script. The God of light and the spirit of shadow, the eternal twin. This cannot stand beside our gospel. Another bishop counters, his voice trembling but firm. But it is older than our gospel, and the people in the East revere it. Shall we erase what they still call divine? Constantine interrupts. We do not erase, we purify. You watch his hand fall on a pile of scrolls. They are the Persian ones, the hymns of fire, the twin creation, the writings of Zarathustra translated into Greek. A soldier steps forward with a brazier. The smell of burning oil fills the air. One by one, the scrolls are cast into flame. The fire eats language. The ashes rise like birds. You want to scream, but no sound leaves you. You are watching the birth of the church and the death of its memory. Another voice speaks, older, hoarse. The book of light and flame bears resemblance to our revelation, the bishop says. Should it not be preserved? Constantine looks down at him. Then we will preserve it under another name. The hall falls silent. From that moment, scripture becomes strategy. Every line chosen not for truth, but for unity. Persian cosmology becomes Christian apocalypse. The twin fire becomes father and son. Balance becomes war. You see scribes working in the corner, copying, editing, reshaping. The language of light rewritten to serve a throne. The symbols of flame replaced by crosses. Words like Asher, truth, replaced with Veritas Dei. The spirit of the fire temple reborn as the spirit of the church. One young scribe hesitates. But if the light and darkness were once brothers, why must we name one the devil? A bishop frowns. Because empire cannot rule over equals. You understand it now. The council's true purpose was never to define God. It was to define obedience. The Persian idea of dual creation, that both light and shadow were necessary, was too dangerous, too free, so they turned harmony into heresy. Hours pass, debates echo, some resist, most yield. When the final vote is cast, the decision is unanimous. The teachings of the fire worshippers are condemned as pagan dualism. Their scriptures are ordered destroyed or hidden under new names. That night, you walk through the ashes outside the council hall. The sky above glows faintly red, not from dawn, but from what still burns behind those doors. Fragments of parchment float through the air like lost souls. You catch one and read the last surviving line. Light and shadow, in love, sustain the world. You fold it and keep it close to your heart. The council will be remembered for the Nicene Creed, the affirmation of one God, one faith, one salvation. But beneath that polished declaration lies another creed, unspoken, one truth for the masses and another for the archives. You look toward the horizon, toward Persia, where the temples of fire still glow in defiance. The church may have claimed the flame, but it cannot unmake its memory. And deep beneath Rome, where the archives will one day rise, the ashes of those burned scrolls will be swept into marble urns labeled Doctrina Ignis, the doctrine of fire. No one will speak of it again, not in sermons, not in scripture, but the fire remembers, always. The descent begins in silence. Beneath the Vatican, the air grows warmer with every step. You follow a spiral staircase carved into bedrock, the walls slick with condensation and something older than water, the residue of centuries of ritual. The guide ahead of you carries a torch, though electricity hums faintly through hidden wires. It is a pilgrimage disguised as maintenance. The further you go, the more the air changes. It no longer smells of damp stone, but of faint incense and iron. The heat is subtle, rising from below, steady as breath. You reach a narrow corridor lined with tombs, the necropolis beneath St. Peter's Basilica. Names carved in Latin, fading to illegibility. Linus, Clement, Sixtus, the earliest popes, guardians of flame disguised as faith. Your guide stops at a locked iron gate. He removes a key the color of ash and turns it slowly. The gate opens with a sigh, revealing a deeper chamber. At its center stands an altar of white marble, cracked but intact. Above it, faint murals depict tongues of fire descending upon men's heads. Pentecost again, the Holy Spirit made visible. Yet beneath the Christian art, barely visible under layers of soot, you see another image. Carved into the stone itself, a sunburst, its rays encircling a bowl of flame. The symbol of a Tar Mazda. You step closer. The realization chills you more than the air ever could. Beneath the world's holiest church burns a Persian altar. The guide watches you silently. You ask him if he knows what this is. He nods once. They call it the Chapel of Illumination. It was sealed in 1572. Only a few of us know how to find it. You approach the altar. It radiates faint warmth. There is no visible flame, but you can feel one, alive, hidden beneath stone. You kneel and press your hand to the surface. The warmth pulses like a heartbeat. You whisper, "What burns beneath?" The guide answers quietly, "A light that predates the cross." He walks to a corner of the chamber and lifts a small iron plate from the floor. Beneath it, a narrow shaft glows with amber light. Heat breathes upward. You peer inside and see it, a small flame burning on a pool of oil that never seems to deplete. "This is the ignis perennis," he says, "the eternal fire. It was brought here from the east when the empire was young." You realize what he's saying. The church never destroyed the Persian flame. It buried it under St. Peter's tomb, the heart of Christendom. The symbolism is deliberate. Fire beneath the cross, memory beneath power. The guide hands you a parchment, its edges brittle. You unroll it carefully. The text is written in Latin, translated from something older. The fire must be kept living, for it is the breath of the world. From its light shall come the words of God. You recognize the phrasing. It mirrors the Gospel of John once more. But this version predates it. You ask, why keep it hidden? He sighs. Because faith needs mystery more than truth, and truth burns too brightly. You stare at the flame below. Its glow reflects faintly on the marble walls, painting ghostly shapes that look like wings. For a moment, you think you hear whispers, the same low hum you heard in the desert temples, the sound of ancient prayer looping endlessly through time. Your guide extinguishes his torch. Only the hidden fire remains. The room fills with golden light, pulsing, alive. You feel its warmth in your chest, the echo of a memory too vast to belong to one religion. Then you see it, an inscription carved faintly along the edge of the altar, in Avestan. You translate it under your breath. When the church forgets the fire, the world forgets itself. You touch the words and feel them vibrate. The marble hums like a living thing. The guide steps forward again. "There are others like you," he says softly. "Archivists, seekers, those who remember where the light began. We meet once every century to rekindle the flame. The Vatican calls us heretics, but we are only keepers of balance." He pauses. "Will you remember?" You nod, though words feel inadequate. He replaces the iron plate, sealing the flame once more. The heat vanishes instantly, replaced by the cold weight of stone. As you climb the staircase back toward the surface, the air cools and the hum fades. You emerge into the basilica just as the morning mass begins. The choir's voices rise, singing of the Holy Spirit, descending in tongues of fire. You look up at the dome, radiant with sunlight streaming through gold glass. Every ray feels familiar now, not divine revelation, but ancient continuity. The flame beneath your feet burns quietly, patient as eternity. You whisper to yourself, the fire never died. And from somewhere deep below, you feel a pulse, faint, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a buried god who never left. The wind over the Italian hills carries dust like the breath of forgotten centuries. You follow a cobbled path beyond Rome's edge toward a monastery long abandoned, its roof collapsed, its walls draped in vines. Locals call it Santa Speculum Dei, the mirror of God. But the name predates Latin. In older tongues it was Dare Asher, the door of light. Inside, moonlight filters through a cracked dome. The air is thick with the scent of wax and rain-soaked stone. At the center of the ruin stands a pedestal carved from obsidian, its surface polished to such perfection that it reflects the stars even in darkness. You approach, and the reflection trembles. You see yourself, but not as you are. Behind your image flickers fire, ancient temples, mountains of Persia, the faces of kings and prophets and angels, all folded into the mirror's dark surface like dreams too heavy to die. You touch the glass, and the temperature shifts. The reflection deepens, stretching downward as though it opens into another world. Then the voice comes, low, steady, resonant, neither male nor female. You seek what was hidden, but you do not yet see what hides within you. The mirror ripples, and suddenly you are standing in the desert again. The sand glows faintly with veins of light, like molten threads beneath the surface. Before you rises a figure cloaked in gold and ash, eyes burning, hands open as if holding invisible fire. Zarathustra, you whisper. He inclines his head. The desert wind hums around him, carrying sparks. You stand before my mirror, he says, but you look only for history. You try to answer, but your voice fails. The air feels charged with something too vast to speak. He gestures toward the horizon. The world is reflection, he says. Every belief, every empire, every holy word, all born from mirrors facing each other. What one sees as light, another calls illusion. What one names God, another names fire. The truth is neither. You ask him what the mirror is for. He smiles faintly. To remember the unity beneath names. Rome forgot. Persia remembered. He extends his hand, and from the sand rises a disk of polished bronze. Its surface gleams with shifting images, battles, coronations, councils. You see Constantine at Nicaea, the bishops arguing, the scrolls burning. You see the Vatican built stone by stone atop the memory of fire. All mirrors show the same story, Zoroaster says. The story of men remaking light in their image. He turns the disk, and the reflection changes. Now you see another future, one that never came to pass. Temples of both fire and cross standing side by side. Priests praying not in opposition, but harmony. A world where faith remained balance, not conquest. This, he says softly, was the world before fear. You stare into the vision until it dissolves. The desert fades. You stand once more before the obsidian mirror in the monastery. But now its surface burns with faint light, symbols rising like embers across its glass. You recognize some of them, circles within circles, the twin serpents, the Faravaha's wings. But one symbol stands apart, a spiral made of flame. Zoroaster's voice returns. That spiral is not mine. It is yours. The realization hits like thunder. The mirror was not a relic of the prophet. It was a reflection of everyone who seeks truth beyond division. To look into it is to see both the fire that creates and the shadow that questions. You whisper, then the mirror isn't a window. No, the voice replies, it is a bridge. The symbols brighten until the light fills the room, reflecting across the dome, the broken marble, your eyes. You see the twin creation again, Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, dancing within the same fire. You see the angels of Persia, the serpent of light, the hidden flame beneath St. Peter's, all connected, all mirrored within one pulse of eternal reflection. Then the light recedes. You are alone again. The mirror is still, but in its surface, your reflection burns faintly with gold around the edges. The voice fades to a whisper. When men look for God, they look into mirrors and forget they are the reflection. Outside, the dawn breaks. You step into the cold air and feel warmth under your skin, as though a small flame has taken root within you. The monastery behind you glows faintly with sunrise, its shattered dome gleaming like obsidian catching light. And as you walk away, you know that Zoroaster's mirror was never built to reveal the divine, only to remind the divine of itself. The Vatican's archives stretch deep beneath the city, but the chamber you now enter lies deeper still, below even the ossuaries, beyond the reach of official maps. You pass through a door marked Archivum Redemptoris, the Archive of Redemption. The floor slopes downward into a vault, lit only by candlelight. At its center, rests a single manuscript displayed beneath glass. Its title is Evangelium Orientis, the Eastern Gospel. The parchment is written in both Greek and a script older than either Latin or Hebrew. The seal at its corner bears two symbols, the cross and the sunburst. You recognize the pattern immediately, the mark of Zoroastrian duality. You lean closer. The text begins. In the age of fire, before kingdoms of men, the Saoshyant shall come, born of mortal flesh, carrying the flame of wisdom. He shall walk through darkness, not to destroy it, but to know it. And from his knowing shall light be renewed. You read the words again, slower this time. The Saoshyant, the redeemer of Zoroastrian prophecy. His purpose was not salvation through sacrifice, but balance through illumination. And then the parallels strike you like lightning. Virgin birth, messenger of light, defeater of darkness through wisdom, not war. The prophecy predates Christ by nearly 1,000 years. You turn the page. The next passage reads, He shall speak in parables, for truth cannot be spoken plainly to those who still sleep. He shall heal with light, not hand. He shall rise after death, not as flesh, but as fire unending. You feel your throat tighten. Every miracle, every symbol, the same. But the Saoshyant's resurrection is described not as return to life, but as transmutation, the soul turning into light. The Latin commentary in the margins chills you further. Adapted into the doctrine of resurrection under the guidance of the Eastern Fathers, AD 80. Adapted. You realize what this manuscript is, the bridge between Persia's prophecy and Christianity's foundation. The story of Christ, reimagined from the legend of Zoroaster's final savior. The Vatican had preserved it quietly while teaching its rewritten form for centuries. You whisper, they didn't steal him, they edited him. The candles flicker as if stirred by unseen breath. You continue reading. The last page contains a line underlined in red ink. He who carries the flame is not one man, but many. Every soul that remembers light becomes the Saoshyant, reborn. Your hands tremble. This is not the language of hierarchy. This is democracy of spirit, the idea that redemption belongs to all, not a single Messiah. No church could survive such truth. You hear footsteps echo from the corridor. Someone approaches. You step back into the shadows as a robed cardinal enters. He moves toward the glass case, his expression solemn. He places a hand over the manuscript as if blessing it, but his lips move in a whisper too low to catch. You edge closer. His voice breaks the silence. The heresy that birthed faith, he murmurs. Without it, there would be no Christ. Without Christ, there would be no Rome. Forgive us, Lord, for the necessity of our deception. He closes his eyes. Truth must serve the soul, not destroy it. Then he turns and leaves, locking the gate behind him. When he's gone, you step forward again. The manuscript glows faintly under candlelight. As though aware of your gaze, you press your palm against the glass. The warmth beneath it feels alive, pulsing faintly, the heartbeat of an ancient revelation. You whisper, the Saoshyant never ended. He multiplied. A sudden gust extinguishes the candles. In the dark, the manuscript glows brighter. The golden letters shimmer, and for a moment, the figure of a man appears within the glass. Eyes luminous, face neither Persian nor Roman. He smiles faintly and speaks without sound. Do you see now? The Savior was never mine to own. He was yours to remember. The vision fades. The glass cools. Silence returns. You leave the chamber with the weight of millennia pressing on your heart. The air outside feels colder now, sharper, as if the city itself senses what you carry. The bells of St. Peter's begin to toll. each chime echoing like a heartbeat from another age. As you cross the square, you look up at the basilica's dome. Beneath it lies the buried flame, the Persian altar, the secret of origin. Above it, 1,000 candles flicker in worship of the man who was once a myth of light. The world still prays to the Zoroastrian without knowing his name. You pause beneath the great obelisk, once Egyptian, then Roman, now crowned with a cross. Layers upon layers, just like faith itself. Every stone, every story, a translation of fire into form. You close your eyes and whisper the truth that no empire could erase. The Messiah was rewritten, but the light remained pure. And in that moment, as dawn spills over Rome, you feel the warmth of the hidden flame rise through the marble beneath your feet, the fire beneath St. Peter's, whispering softly from the beginning of time, what was borrowed shall one day return. The candlelight trembles on the edge of vision. The chamber is narrow, lined with shelves of sealed manuscripts, each marked only by a single symbol, the sun swallowed by an eclipse. The Vatican archivists call this collection Codex Umbrae, the Codex of Shadows. You run your hand along the spine of one tome, and dust clings to your fingers like ash. The leather feels alive, almost breathing. The air hums faintly, as if the books themselves remember what they contain. These are not scripture, they are corrections, the discarded drafts of divinity. A brass plaque hangs crooked above the shelves, engraved with a phrase in Latin, ex lux tenebrae, from light, darkness. You take a book from the shelf. Its weight surprises you. The cover bears burn marks around the edges, as if it has already survived one attempt at destruction. You open it carefully. The text begins in Avestan, but halfway through, the words dissolve into Latin, a hybrid of two faiths grafted together. The first line reads, "When light spoke creation, shadow answered with memory." You keep reading. The script describes a meeting between Ahura Mazda and his twin reflection, Angra Mainyu, not as enemies, but as participants in a divine covenant. Each promised to shape one half of existence. The light would create, the shadow would preserve, but the later Latin translation twists the meaning. In this version, Angra Mainyu rebels, and his role as preserver becomes that of corrupter. It is the familiar fall of Lucifer, rewritten through Persian eyes. You realize what this text is, the missing bridge between the Zoroastrian duality and the Christian myth of the fall. The fire that once symbolized balance became war. You turn another page. The margins are annotated in red ink, written centuries later by Vatican theologians. The handwriting is desperate, almost violent. This cannot be revealed. The faithful must not learn that the adversary was once co-creator. Your breath catches. You can almost feel their fear, not of the devil, but of equality. The church could not allow a world where shadow was sacred. You continue reading. The Codex details rituals once performed in the fire temples, ceremonies of dual invocation. The priests would light two flames, one of gold, one of blue. They would chant prayers to both Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, asking them to remain in harmony. Without shadow, the text says, the fire consumes. Without light, the fire dies. The Latin marginalia calls it heresy. No unity with evil, no communion with shadow. You pause, staring at the page. The divide between faiths was born not from revelation, but from editing, from fear. A soft noise breaks the silence, parchment shifting on its own. Another book falls from the shelf and lands at your feet. The binding cracks open, revealing a sketch of a cathedral's blueprint. You recognize it, St. Peter's Basilica. But beneath the dome, drawn in faint lines, is a chamber you have never seen. A circular hall beneath the tomb, marked with the same eclipse symbol. You flip through the pages. They describe a ceremony once performed there every century, the Vigil of Balance. A secret order of priests descended to rekindle the hidden flame beneath St. Peter's, offering two prayers, one to the Holy Spirit and one to the Keeper of Shadow. You whisper, they prayed to both. The air grows warmer, the candle flares. You hear the faintest echo of chanting, voices from another age. The text continues. The last vigil was performed in 1453, after which the codex was sealed. The flame was declared pure light, the twin prayer forbidden. You close the book and stare at the plaque above the shelves again. Ex lux, tenebrae. From light, darkness. You finally understand. It is not warning. It is confession. The archivists who hid this collection knew what the church had done. The Codex of Shadows was never meant to destroy the Vatican's truth, only to preserve what it erased. You return the tome to its place. But before you leave, you glance back. The candlelight flickers, and for an instant, the symbol of the eclipse seems to move. The sun and moon overlap perfectly, neither conquering the other. Balance. The shadow is not absence. It is memory, the record of light. You extinguish the flame and walk into the corridor. The air is cool, silent. But as you close the door behind you, the brass plaque catches one final reflection of your candle's ember, and for a heartbeat, the words shimmer with living fire. Ex lux, tenebrae. Ex tenebrae, lux. From light, darkness. From darkness, light. You hear the bells before you see the crowd. St. Peter's Square is full. Thousands gathered beneath the morning sun, faces lifted toward the great balcony. The Pope stands high above, his white robes glowing like sunlight. His voice, amplified through hidden speakers, fills the square. The light conquers the darkness. The fire burns the shadow. Truth destroys the lie. The crowd repeats the words like a spell. Light conquers darkness. You stand among them, invisible, watching the rhythm of faith turn into rhythm of control. The banners wave, golden crosses, silver suns, and behind them, guards in crimson armor. The spectacle feels ancient, rehearsed, and beneath it all, you hear another voice, quieter, older, whispering through the back of your mind. Fear was the first doctrine. You close your eyes and listen. Every sermon you've heard echoes back through memory. The warnings of hell, the threats of judgment, the promise of salvation only through obedience. The same story, repeated through centuries. You remember the Codex of Shadows. The erased lines that once said light and shadow were companions. The Council of Erasure, turning that partnership into battle. The doctrine of fear was born that day, the invention that gave empire the shape of God. You wander from the crowd, slipping through an archway into the basilica. Inside, the air is cooler, quieter, but not empty. The walls hum faintly with centuries of worship, layered upon layers of whispered confession and quiet dread. You see it now, the architecture of fear. High ceilings to make man feel small, murals of judgment to remind him of consequence. You stop before a fresco of St. Michael spearing a dragon. The colors are brilliant, gold, red, white. But the dragon's eyes are not monstrous. They look sorrowful. You trace the painted spear with your eyes and realize how perfectly it pierces the heart, not the head. This is not depiction, it's message. The death of understanding. You whisper, they made fear sacred. A voice answers behind you. It was necessary. You turn. An old priest stands in the shadows near the column. His face is pale, his eyes sharp. He wears no cross, only a simple chain with a symbol you recognize. The eclipse. He steps closer. Without fear, faith scatters, he says. It was not malice, it was survival. You ask him, whose survival? He looks up toward the fresco. The churches. The world listens when it trembles. His words fall heavy, neither lie nor confession. He motions for you to follow him. You walk together through a narrow passage leading behind the altar. The hall opens into a small chamber lit by a single lamp. On the wall hangs a faded banner depicting a serpent encircling a cross. The doctrine of fear began here, the priest says. When the fires of Persia came to Rome, the priests of the new faith found the people ungovernable. They worshipped too many lights. They saw God in all things. The empire could not hold such freedom, so they gave them one fire and taught them to fear its opposite. He sits slowly on a stone bench. They called it protection, but fear is the purest currency of control. You ask why he tells you this. He smiles faintly. Because fear has burned too long. The flame beneath St. Peter's grows restless. It does not wish to be the weapon of obedience anymore. He takes a small book from his robe and hands it to you. Its cover bears no title, only the symbol of the eclipse. You open it. The first line reads, "Fear binds the ignorant, but balance frees the wise." The text describes the hidden counter-doctrine, lex equilibria, the law of balance. It teaches that the soul is neither saved nor damned, only guided by its own awareness. Heaven and hell are states of perception, not geography. The priest whispers, "This was once our truth, before fear, before Rome." You feel something shift in the air. The lamp flickers, casting twin shadows, one yours, one his, both merging on the wall like twin flames. He looks at them and sighs. We forgot that shadow belongs to the light, and so we made war on ourselves. He rises, his movements slow but steady. "Take the book," he says. "The age of fear is ending. The fire will speak again soon, and when it does, it will not whisper obedience. It will whisper remembrance." You leave him there, sitting in silence beneath the serpent and the cross. Outside, the square is empty now. The banners are gone. Only sunlight remains, falling through the pillars in twin beams. One gold, one silver. The marble beneath your feet feels warm, alive. You open the small book once more and read the final passage. Fear was never God's voice. It was man's echo. You look toward the horizon, where the city glows in soft morning haze. Somewhere beneath it, the ancient flame still burns, the fire that birthed both salvation and control. But its warmth feels different now, not oppressive, not demanding. You whisper, "No more fear," and the air itself seems to answer, a sound like breath through embers, a voice awakening after centuries. Then let light and shadow meet again. The sea smells of ink and smoke. You stand at the edge of a collapsing empire, watching flames devour the Library of Alexandria. The sky above Egypt is red as blood, streaked with ash that falls like black snow. Each ember carries a word, a name, a fragment of something the world will never read again. The wind roars like grief. Behind you, scholars scream as they carry scrolls through the smoke, only to drop them in despair when soldiers block every exit. The fire spreads faster than thought, consuming walls, shelves, and centuries of knowledge. You move through the chaos, trying to breathe. The air tastes of parchment and salt. Somewhere inside, beneath the crackle of burning papyrus, you hear a deeper sound, not destruction, but release, as though the flames themselves are whispering their secrets to the air. You push open the bronze doors of the inner hall. Inside, the heat is unbearable, yet something keeps you moving forward. You know what burns here is not merely history, it is continuity, the unbroken thread between Persia and Rome, between fire and faith. Through the smoke, you glimpse it, a marble table in the center of the chamber, still untouched by flame. Upon it lies a collection of scrolls bound by bronze rings, marked with the symbol of the sun and flame. The Avestan archives, the fire scrolls of Persia, the last true link between Zoroaster and the church. You rush forward, shielding your face from the heat. The flames leap higher, as if defending their own burial. You grab the nearest scroll and unroll a fraction of it. The ink glows faintly in the light. Words shimmer. The light that knows itself becomes the soul of all things. Then the ceiling groans. Beams collapse. You barely manage to tear a fragment of parchment before the fire swallows the rest. You stumble backward as heat claws at your skin. Outside, soldiers chant. You recognize the language, Latin mixed with Coptic. They're not merely burning books. They're reciting a ritual. Each verse is an invocation. Let false light be consumed by holy flame. The irony crushes you. They call it holy, yet they burn the very knowledge that gave birth to their holiness. Through the chaos, a man approaches. His robe half-scorched, his eyes luminous. He is a librarian, one of the last guardians. In his hands, he carries a clay vessel glowing faintly with red light. "Help me," he gasps. "It must not die." You take the vessel. It is warm, almost alive. Inside, you see a small flame, steady despite the storm of fire around you. "It's a remnant," he says, coughing. "From the temple of Yazd, the eternal fire, the first spark." You realize what he means. The Persians who fled west after the conquests carried their sacred flame here, to Alexandria, the city of all knowledge. They preserved it beneath the scrolls, a beacon for memory. And now the Vatican's predecessors, the Roman bishops, have sent soldiers to destroy it, not for heresy, but for monopoly. The librarian falls to his knees. "Take it," he whispers. "Carry it east. When memory returns, light it again." Before you can answer, the ceiling collapses behind him. Fire engulfs the hall. You run, the vessel held against your chest. The heat scorches your lungs, but the flame inside remains calm, untouched. When you reach the harbor, the city is already lost. Ships burn, statues melt. The air glows red, like the inside of a forge. You board a small boat tied loosely to the dock and push it into the dark sea. From the water you look back. The library stands like a cathedral on fire, its windows radiating orange and gold. It looks almost holy. The irony again. Knowledge dying in imitation of divinity. You cradle the vessel in your hands. Its light flickers across your face. Inside it, the flame swirls. Not chaotic, but rhythmic, as if breathing. You whisper to it. You are the last witness. The flame steadies. For hours, you drift as Alexandria burns to embers. The horizon glows faintly, the stars obscured by smoke. When dawn comes, only ash remains. But the sea around you gleams faintly with reflected fire. Thousands of tiny sparks floating on the waves. You realize what's happened. The fire has not died. It has divided. Every burning scroll has released its memory into the air, into the water, into you. The librarian's last words echo in your mind. When memory returns, light it again. You lift the vessel, open its lid, and breathe softly into the flame. It flares once, bright enough to illuminate the endless sea. For a moment, you see visions in the glow. Zoroaster standing before his fire, the Vatican vaults yet to be built, the monks who will one day guard what they pretend to forget. When the vision fades, the flame remains steady. The Library of Alexandria is gone, but its light has not vanished. It has simply changed carriers. And as you drift toward the eastern horizon, the flame's reflection follows you like a twin. The fire, it seems, has chosen to survive by becoming invisible. The night in Rome feels alive. You stand atop Janiculum Hill, overlooking the city's veins of light. The streets below glow like molten rivers, branching and converging, as if the city itself remembers how to burn. In your hand is the fragment of parchment you salvaged from Alexandria, now sealed in glass. The ink has darkened with time, but under certain light, faint lines appear, arcs connecting points across the known world. Persia, Egypt, Jerusalem, Rome. You realize it's not a text at all. It's a map, the map of fire lines. Each mark corresponds to ancient fire temples, later replaced by churches or cathedrals. You trace the line from Yazd to Persepolis, then westward to Antioch, through Jerusalem to Alexandria, and finally to Rome. The path forms a perfect spiral, the same spiral you saw etched into Zoroaster's mirror. The fire wasn't lost, it was relocated. You descend the hill and walk through the city as the map guides you. Every landmark you pass vibrates with recognition. Fountains where once stood altars, domes built over sun temples, basilicas that still echo with chants in the old cadence of Avestan hymns. The first point leads you to the Pantheon. Inside, moonlight pours through the oculus, illuminating the marble floor. You notice the bronze pattern beneath your feet, concentric circles radiating outward. It mirrors the geometry of Persian fire pits. The Pantheon's dome, you realize, was not designed for the gods of Rome. It was built to echo fire. When Christianity absorbed it, they simply replaced flame with prayer. You sit beneath the oculus and hold the map under the light. The parchment glows faintly. A new line appears, leading from Rome northward to Paris, then west toward Santiago de Compostela. The spiral expands. You whisper, "The fire spread with empire." The Vatican didn't extinguish the Zoroastrian flame. It converted it into network, a web of sanctuaries aligned to channel energy through architecture, geometry, and song. A global circuitry of prayer powered by ancient fire. You step back into the streets. The city hums like a living organism. Every bell tower, every cathedral spire feels connected by invisible threads. The fire lines are not symbolic. They are literal, ley lines carved into earth and stone, pulsing with energy that once belonged to the Persians. You follow the trail south to the Basilica of St. John Lateran, the official seat of the Pope. Its floor mosaic bears an unfamiliar design, flames spiraling inward toward a single golden disc. You kneel and touch the mosaic. The marble is warm, far warmer than the air around it. A whisper rises from the floor, soft but clear. The fire is one. The paths are many. You close your eyes and listen. Beneath the surface hum lies a deeper tone, like the heartbeat of the city. You realize that every church along the fire line resonates in harmony, each a tuning fork for divine frequency. You move on, following the resonance. The map leads you to the outskirts, to catacombs beneath an unmarked chapel. Inside, walls carved with Latin prayers overlap older inscriptions in Avestan. You light a small candle. The flame dances, casting shadows that merge into spiral patterns on the walls. And then it happens. The faint hum you've been hearing grows louder, forming a melody, low and ancient. The same melody you heard in the fire temples. The sound travels through the walls, through stone corridors, up toward the earth above. You understand. The fire still burns, not as flame, but as vibration, the living memory of light encoded into sound, architecture, and geometry. You open the map again. A final line appears, curving back east, looping through Constantinople and ending in Persia once more. The spiral closes perfectly. A cycle, not migration, return. You remember the prophecy written in the scrolls. What burns once may burn again. The map isn't static, it's instruction. A guide for reigniting the world's hidden fires. Each marked site is a dormant spark waiting to awaken. You climb back to the surface. The dawn is breaking. Rome glows gold beneath the rising sun, every dome and tower illuminated. You can almost see the lines connecting them, a luminous web of light threading across continents, linking east and west, past and present. You whisper, "This is the map of remembrance." The wind answers softly, carrying the scent of incense and ash. As the sun rises, you hold the map up to the light. The spiral glows brighter, and for an instant, the parchment catches flame, not burning, but illuminating. In its glow, you see visions of fire temples reawakening across the world. Priests and monks, scientists and seekers, each drawn to the same pulse, each rediscovering the universal fire beneath all faith. When the light fades, the map is blank. The lines have disappeared, but you no longer need them. You know where they lead, not to places, but to moments. Every church bell, every candle lit, every spark of curiosity is a fire line in motion. You look eastward, toward the unseen deserts of Persia, where the first flame once burned. The city around you hums like a living engine of light. The fire never vanished. It was mapped into the bones of the world, waiting for someone to see it again. And as you stand beneath the awakening sun, the words form in your mind like an echo from every century that tried to forget. The light is not kept. It travels. The fire is not owned. It remembers. The corridor smells faintly of cinnamon and myrrh. You follow the light of a single lantern through a narrow passage beneath the apostolic palace. The stones underfoot are uneven, older than Rome itself. At the end of the passage stands a door carved with unfamiliar symbols, 7 stars arranged around a sunburst. The same pattern that once adorned the fire temples of Persia. The door opens before you. Inside, a chamber glows with amber light. Shelves line the walls, filled not with books, but with instruments, astrolabes, compasses, lenses, hourglasses, and maps charted with celestial fire. At the center of the room stands a man in white robes trimmed with gold. He is not dressed like a cardinal or scholar, but like something older, a priest of forgotten lineage. "You've come far," he says without turning. "Few follow the fire this deep." You recognize his accent, faintly Persian, though aged through generations of Latin. He turns, and his eyes are pale as smoke. Around his neck hangs a medallion etched with the spiral flame, the mark of Zoroaster. "You're one of them," you whisper. "The Magi." He smiles faintly. "We never left." He gestures to the instruments around him. "When the fires of the East fell silent, we hid our knowledge beneath the Vatican. The Church needed our astronomy to chart its heavens, our alchemy to turn lead into symbols of redemption. We gave them the language of light, and in return, they buried our names." He leads you toward a table where parchment maps lie scattered, diagrams of constellations drawn not as animals or saints, but as flames and spirals. "The first Magi were not kings," he says softly. "We were watchers, translators of the fire's language. When we followed the star to Bethlehem, we were not worshipping a newborn god. We were confirming a prophecy, the rebirth of the flame." He places a finger on one of the maps, tracing a line between Persia and Judea. That light was not divine intervention. It was celestial alignment, a fire crossing the sky to remind the world of its origins. You stare at the star chart. It mirrors the spiral you saw on the map of fire lines. The Magi's path was not symbolic. It was geometric. A journey designed to realign the fires of East and West. "But why here?" you ask. "Why stay in Rome?" He looks up at the ceiling, where faint constellations are painted in gold leaf. "Because conquest turns into curiosity. Rome devoured Persia's wisdom, but could never digest it. So we stayed, hidden in the body of the beast, tending its secret heart." He opens a small chest and removes a thin silver disc engraved with the words Lux Aeternam, eternal light. He places it in your hand. It hums softly, as if alive. "This," he says, "was once called the fire lens. It was built to reflect light in perfect harmony, balancing shadow within its edge. Through it, the Magi read the rhythm of the world. We used it to keep the Vatican's hidden flame alive, the same one beneath St. Peter's." You stare into the disc. Within its mirror, light bends and ripples. For a moment, you see faces. Zoroaster, the Saoshyant, Christ, all sharing the same eyes. The fire remembers all its reflections. The Magus speaks again, voice quieter now. "The Church believes we died out. But we became its astronomers, its mathematicians, its architects. We designed its cathedrals to align with the fire lines you've seen. We encoded the old prayers into the geometry of domes and arches. Every hymn that speaks of light descending still carries our rhythm. He turns away, his voice heavy with memory. But we are tired of disguise. The time of concealment is ending. You ask what that means. The flame will rise again, he says. Not as faith, but as awareness. The same awareness your ancestors burned in Alexandria. The same that we preserved under this city. When that fire awakens, no church, no empire will contain it. He places his hand on your shoulder. His palm feels warm, too warm. You carry the spark, he says. Every seeker does. But remember, the fire burns those who mistake knowledge for ownership. The candles around you dim, then flare white hot, flooding the room with blinding light. When it fades, the magus is gone. Only the silver disc remains on the table, still humming faintly. You look around the chamber. The instruments have shifted. The maps now glow with invisible ink, forming patterns of light across the walls. They connect every sacred site in the world, not as borders, but as mirrors. You understand now. The Magi never died. They became the silent architects of civilization, keepers of the fire disguised as servants of heaven. As you leave the chamber, the air feels charged, alive with unseen electricity. Beneath your breath, the words form without will. Lux Aeternum. The eternal light answers with a whisper that sounds almost human. Remember us when the stars align again. The eclipse begins at midday. Crowds fill St. Peter's Square, gazing upward as the moon slowly devours the sun. The sky dims to iron grey. Bells ring across the city, their tones swallowed by silence. You stand among them, knowing this moment was written long before any of them could imagine it. The Magi called it the blackened sun, the moment when the fire remembers itself. A union of light and shadow so perfect that for a few minutes, the world returns to balance. As the last arc of sunlight fades, the crowd gasps. The sun becomes a dark ring burning at the edges, an eye of fire staring back at creation. The air cools, the pigeons vanish. The world holds its breath. You feel it immediately. The pulse beneath the marble, the hidden flame under St. Peter's stirring for the first time in centuries. It moves through the ground like thunder. The stone beneath your feet grows warm. The sky above Rome is no longer day or night. It is memory. You close your eyes. Behind your lids, you see it. The spiral map reawakening. Fire lines glowing across the earth, connecting Persia, Jerusalem, Alexandria, and Rome. Each point flares like a heartbeat. The network hums. And beneath the Vatican, the hidden flame roars back to life. People scream as the ground trembles. The cross atop the basilica gleams brighter than the sun itself. You hear whispers, not human, but collective, echoing through time. The voices of every faith that ever called upon light. The shadow returns to its source. You run through the square, the heat growing stronger. The marble radiates light through your shoes. Statues of saints seem to breathe. The air tastes of iron and incense. Inside the basilica, chaos reigns. Priests fall to their knees, praying in tongues long dead. The golden dome glows from within, casting the entire interior in amber fire. You walk toward the altar, drawn by a sound deeper than sound, the heartbeat of the earth remembering itself. And then, from the floor, light erupts. A column of fire bursts upward through the cracks, shattering the marble. The eternal flame of Persia, long buried beneath Rome, breaks free. It burns clean, white, silent, a flame without smoke. The crowd flees, but you stand frozen before it. Within the fire, you see shapes, not faces, but forms. Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu intertwined, the twin creation reborn. From within the flame, a voice speaks, layered and vast. You have carried us far, Seeker, but we were never gone. We only slept beneath the weight of fear. You fall to your knees. The light envelops you, yet it does not burn. It feels like recognition, like coming home. The world has lived too long in halves, the voice continues. They called me God. They called me devil, but I am both, and neither. I am the flame that sees itself. The words echo through every cell in your body. You understand. This is the reunion foretold by the Magi, the moment when light and shadow embrace once more. You whisper, trembling, the blackened sun. The end of division, the flame replies. The beginning of remembrance. The eclipse outside reaches its totality. Rome lies in darkness, except for the fire streaming through the basilica's cracks. It climbs the pillars, threads through the stained glass, and projects ancient Persian symbols across the walls. Spirals, wings, suns. The cathedral becomes a fire temple again, reborn in silence. You see priests weeping. Some drop their crosses. Some raise them higher. A few simply stare, awestruck. None can deny what they see. The holy fire they thought buried is alive. The flame begins to rise higher, curling into a sphere suspended beneath the dome. Its light flickers between gold and black, the union of opposites. The voice speaks one final time. Do not call me holy. Do not call me evil. Call me whole. Then, as the eclipse wanes, the fire contracts. The sphere collapses inward, shrinking into a single ember that floats down toward you. You catch it in your hands. It's warm, pulsing softly, like a heartbeat. The basilica falls silent. Outside, sunlight returns. The world resumes its breath, unaware that its center has shifted. You walk out into the square, the ember hidden in your palm. The sun above is pale now, veiled with haze, but you know what hides behind that light, the memory of balance. The crowd disperses slowly, murmuring prayers they no longer fully believe. You look back at the dome. It no longer gleams gold. It glows faintly red, like the last light of sunset. The blackened sun of Rome will be remembered as an omen, a miracle, or madness. But you know the truth. The flame was never meant to stay buried. You whisper to the air, the world remembers. And far beneath the marble, unseen by all, the last whisper of the fire answers. Soft as breath, eternal as truth, and what remembers shall rise again. The sound begins at twilight, low, distant, like wind moving through stone corridors. You are standing on the steps of the old basilica, the same one that trembled during the blackened sun. The air feels charged again, not electric, but haunted. Every statue seems to listen. Every window hums. The Vatican has been silent for days. The Pope has not appeared since the eclipse. The newspapers call it the miracle of the returning flame, but no one dares explain it. Rome has become a city of whispers. And then, as the sun dips below the horizon, the choir begins. The voices rise not from the cathedral, but from the earth itself. 1,000 tones, deep, harmonic, wordless. The sound moves through the city like an invisible tide. People stop in the streets, transfixed. Dogs howl, glass trembles. You close your eyes and hear patterns within it. Intervals of 3, 7, and 9. The same sacred numbers that once guided Zoroastrian hymns. It is not Gregorian chant. It is older, wilder, born from the throat of the world. You follow the sound inside the basilica. The air burns faintly with incense and ozone. Candles flicker in perfect rhythm with the tones, as though the flame itself is singing. The choir is unseen, but its resonance shakes the marble floor. You walk toward the altar. The place where fire once erupted now glows faintly with white ash. The ashes shimmer like fine dust suspended in air, rising and falling in rhythm with the song. You step closer. The ashes begin to move, coiling together into faint shapes, wings, faces, or memories of them. The choir of ashes. Each voice belongs to someone long dead: monks, priests, prophets, burned heretics, keepers of fire. The resonance builds until it fills the dome. The entire basilica vibrates, every column singing back. You hear languages folding over each other: Latin, Avestan, Aramaic, tongues long extinct yet suddenly alive. The voices do not clash, they harmonize, each tone completing another. Then, through the music, you hear a clear voice rise above the rest. Female, calm, steady. Child of flame, she calls you. The veil thins. You look up. The ash forms a figure suspended in light. A woman robed in shadow and silver, her hair a crown of smoke. Her eyes glow like the embers of dying stars. You whisper, "Who are you?" Her voice echoes through the stone. "We are what remains of those who sang before fear. We kept the old hymns beneath the new prayers. When the fire rose again, it awakened our sound." You feel tears on your face. "You are the forgotten? We are the balance," she replies. "When they burned the truth, our voices became ash, but ash remembers." Her words ripple through the air, and the other voices respond in kind. You realize that the choir is not lamentation. It is memory returning to itself. She raises her hand, and the ashes swirl faster, creating patterns across the dome. Spirals, constellations, sigils of flame. "Do you see?" she asks. You nod. The images form a message, not written, but felt. A map, not of places, but of frequencies. The choir's sound is the architecture of the hidden fire, a language of vibration that connects light to shadow. "This is how the first temples spoke to the stars," she says, "through resonance, not through worship, but through remembrance." The air pulses brighter, and the ash figure steps closer. You can almost see her face now, both young and ancient, neither saint nor sinner. "The church built walls to keep the fire contained," she says, "but the sound has broken through. The flame has entered their prayers again." You ask her what the choir wants. Her voice softens. "Not vengeance. Completion." The music deepens. The ash forms spiraling pillars around you, lifting you slightly from the ground. The vibrations fill your bones. Every heartbeat synchronizes with the rhythm. You feel yourself dissolving into sound. No body, no self, only resonance. And then, for a single instant, you hear everything. The hum of atoms, the sigh of the earth, the pulse of the stars. It is all the same song. The figure reaches toward you. "Do you understand now?" "Yes," you whisper. "The fire was never an element. It was a frequency." She smiles. "Then you are ready." The choir fades into silence. The ash settles gently back to the floor, glowing faintly before cooling into stillness. You stand alone before the altar, but the silence hums with aftersound. You realize the choir has not vanished. It has entered you. The fire now sings through your blood. Outside, Rome is quiet. But if you listen carefully, you can still hear it. Faint, distant, like the echo of something eternal. The choir of ashes continues beneath the surface of the world, rewriting the silence into song. As you close your eyes, listen carefully. The Vatican sleeps above, but the fire beneath it still breathes. What you felt tonight was only the beginning, the first spark in a story that never truly died. If you want to follow the flame into lost temples, forbidden gospels, and the echoes of the first light, don't forget to subscribe, to stay close when the next story awakens. Because the truth doesn't end, it waits, and it's waiting for you.